I lived in Manhattan from 1997 to 2010. I have a software company, did consulting projects for financial institutions, banks, Columbia University. I licensed software to. I also licensed software to Bank of New York. I lived on the Upper East Side. Loved the Upper East Side. Lived on 82nd Street, right in between Lexington and 3rd, 166 East 82nd Street. That's the front door to my apartment. I lived on the 5th floor. Walk up kept me in shape. There's the top floor there. Very quiet in between Lexington and 3rd. It was great. 2 blocks from the Met. I enjoyed it very much. Rollerbladed all over the place. Convenience of having food right outside your door 24/7. Didn't have to worry about driving. You had mass transit everywhere you went. And then in 2005, I purchased a house from my parents that used to be my grandmother's in upstate New York, about 210 miles north of Manhattan. It's in Washington County. And Washington County is completely different than Manhattan. Basically a whole other state. It's a whole other country, whole other way to live. I would travel back and forth for 5 years, pretty much regularly, every weekend. This is the property, and you can see it's very secluded on 110 acres. It was surrounded by woods and grown up. It used to be a farm that had grown up. Eventually, I started clearing property, and we started mowing here in the lower pastures. Decided that I would put in a corral. You can barely see the corral there. So this is from the front porch. You can see the Adirondack Mountains there. That's the house I grew up in. That is where my parents moved in 71. Basically, I grew up there from Long Island. It's a big house, and you can see the Adirondack Mountains there. That's the southern part of the Adirondack Mountains. That's looking towards Lake George. It's a beautiful place. God's country. Absolutely wonderful here. Close to rivers, close to lakes, hiking trails, you name it. Completely different living than in Manhattan. I developed software, so as I licensed this software to companies, I licensed it to a big manufacturing firm. In September 12, 2006, I began clearing the property in order to build a farm. It started out as a 2-day project that turned into about a 4-week project, the first phase of the clearing. You can see, this is day 2, I believe. You can see the corral up above. The dogs are digging it. As I started to clear, I realized that this is beautiful land and it would be wonderful farmland. Quickly, the 1 or 2 day projects turned into a long project of clearing out ditches and getting water to flow better. This is Derby out there, and then out back getting rid of the beavers. We had a huge beaver problem, and I've spent thousands of hours and hundreds of thousands of dollars clearing property. And in 2007, I got my first 3 calves, which are Scottish Highlanders, and this is the head start in Washington County coming up to see the cows. My mother did a lot of work with the foster care system in Washington County, so she arranged them to come up, and they gave them apples and alfalfa balls, and it was wonderful. This is after we got the land all seeded down that we cleared. It started growing up, and I started putting in temporary fences. It became a project like no other project. I was pretty much out there all the time working on this whenever I wasn't working on software in my office. This is probably 2009, the winter of 2009. Cows are growing up at this point. I started getting a few more. I think right coming up here is 2009, the spring of 2009. This is the first calf born on the property. Her name is Maggie May. This is the second calf born on the property, and his name was Hamish. So Hamish and Maggie May became best of friends. There it all started, and then it became much bigger than I anticipated, for sure. This is Luger hanging out on the property. Coming up the driveway. Now, if you saw the earlier pictures, you couldn't see the driveway before. You could never see the house from the road. It was all planted down. I got some belted Galloways in the summer of 2009. I thought they would go good with the Highlanders, which they did, and we started crossbreeding them, which made very lean beef, which is very, very good. After a lot of work of taking down trees, and it became a full-time project for sure. This is Derby and Luger hanging out. They were loving it. This is phase 2 here, where we had cleared some trees down below. Now I started mixing some of the cows together and got some chickens, and that was I don't even know. And this is one of the bulls, my first bull. That is Axel there. The chickens laid eggs. We had eggs all the time. The dogs and the cows all got along. That is Zusa there. This is Axel here. It was wonderful. Completely different life in Manhattan. As I licensed software, I started spending much more time up here, of course, than I did in Manhattan in 2009, 2010, especially with the cows. I did have help here. This is at the point where at this point, I think I probably had 14 cows, maybe even a little bit more than that. So the farm was growing quickly. I started to process beef, and the beef turned out to be very good. And I started making connections down in Manhattan, in Brooklyn and in Manhattan. Was selling beef to Park Slope in Brooklyn and to Whole Foods in Manhattan, and a couple of small delis in the Upper East Side as well. And that was going very well. And then in 2012, I had a little bit of a problem here. 2012, I got a DWI in January 27th of 2012, which was my own fault, of course. I was coming back from the hospital, and I stopped and got something to eat, and I had 4 beers, which was more than I should have, and I had a taillight out, and I got pulled over. So I ended up getting this, and I wanted to get it reduced, and it took like 6 months to go through all this and finally get it taken care of, and I finally got charged on August 14th, 2012. At that point, this had all happened with Carrie Kennedy, who was Cuomo's ex-wife, which was the talk of the town up here with her getting out of her DWI, which I was involved with a lot of people that were getting DWIs at that time because I was in classes and so forth. And then this came about in September 25th of 2012. Now at the time, I didn't know anything about it because I was trying to stay alive, basically, because I lived 7 miles from the nearest store, and I was hauling feed and getting cows to process and going to buy cows and having to go to Tractor Supply. And without a driver's license, it's impossible to live up here. All these things are happening that I had no idea were happening. I was just waiting for my retroactive time to pass, which was 6 months, trying to keep everything going without a license, because it had been 6 months already before I got charged, so I had to go another 6 months. So it was a year without a license, which was extremely difficult to live up here where I do without a license. It's almost impossible. I'm single. I was 43 years old when I got the DWI, and it was extremely hard to make it. It would have been easier if I had mass transit up here, but there is no mass transit. Taxis are very expensive just to go to the store. It's $50 round trip to go to the store from my house to the nearest grocery store. All these things are happening with this DMV regulation, which I knew nothing about. All these are in chronological order that I got off the internet to make this, to kind of show everyone maybe that doesn't know about these things that are going on, because I had no idea about it until January 2013, right here. This is when I learned what was going on. Governor Cuomo urging DMV to institute these new regulations under Emergency Act. So essentially he bypassed the lawmakers and did this as an executive order, which was done with the commissioner of DMV at the time. And they did it under some kind of an emergency criteria where it didn't have to go through law. Now, the harshness of this, whether you have a lifetime retroactive, if you have 5 alcohol or drug related violations, and they look back 25 years, which they only used to look back 10 until this was passed. So this hit a lot of people hard. A lot of people have lost their houses, have lost their families, have gotten divorced. It caused a huge uproar, especially in 2013 when people really started getting hit by this. So there was petitions. This is just one particular petition that was out there, and a lot of people didn't know about this. There were lawyers coming up with challenging these regulations. I got involved with that. I spent thousands of dollars with a lawyer that was trying to put together a class action lawsuit that they sounded very confident that they would make that this would be unconstitutional and there would be no way that this could remain. But that turned out not to be the case. This was a lot of heartache for a lot of people. I was on support groups at this point because there was people gathering on Facebook and YouTube and various other support groups, and when this happened with the commissioner's son, who slammed his car into a bicyclist. It was a hit and run DWI, and everyone was quite upset about that in these support groups. In 2014, the woman who passed this, she got a speeding ticket, and that was the other talk of the town within these support groups. In December 31st of 2014, the DMV commissioner retired from her post, and in January 2015, Cuomo became the acting commissioner of DMV and went on to rule DMV. Now, this sentence has been extremely devastating sentence of depravity, depression, and desperation for many people in upstate New York, which has led them to depend on people that they probably shouldn't, get taken advantage of. You're basically a sitting duck. And I was a single guy, and I can tell you I was taken advantage of by a lot of people. You really don't have any life. You have no liberty if you don't have a driver's license in upstate New York. You are dehumanized. You don't have any life. You can't live up here without a driver's license. There's no public transportation anywhere where I am up here. Then when this Chris Cuomo thing came out, this was another big gossip point with the various support groups that I've been on, where he had a hit and run. He hit a Mercedes. I guess he was drag racing in the Hamptons, and I guess he was drinking. He just left the scene and didn't get charged with anything. So a lot of people have been upset about this. Now at this point, I am 2-3 years into this without a license, 4 years into this, and I have 60 head of cattle. I've become a burden to friends and family. At this point, I had been getting help from some people. Very hard to find help when the other people have lives to do. I had lots of dogs. I was basically out of time and could no longer make beef runs to the city. I couldn't get my cows to get processed. I couldn't get hay. I was, you have friends, but they say they'll help you out. But after a few years, they have their own lives. They have things to do, and you become you're disabled. You're essentially disabled, and you become depressed. And a lot of people have, committed suicide over this on support groups that I've been on, and families have unbelievable stress and broken up over this. It has destroyed people's careers. It has destroyed their lives, destroyed their marriages, destroyed their families, left kids, in bad situations. And I didn't have any children, but I had a lot of cattle, and they were basically my children. And at this point, I was in a bad situation because winter was coming up, and I didn't know what to do. And I was trying to sell off cows, and on Craigslist and various other posting sites, and it's very hard to move that many cattle. I ended up calling an auctioneer, and I tell you what, it killed me. I was so depressed, and I was suicidal. I was out of my mind. And then when this, repeated was upheld by courts, which are owned by Cuomo anyways. All the judges are owned by Cuomo. I mean, this whole state is owned by Cuomo. All these lawyers that had great hopes and expectations for turning this around, it never happened, which left a lot of people even more desperate, and a lot of people that I think, lost everything, and maybe, lost their lives because of this. I know there was at least four or five people on support groups I've been that did pull the trigger. And this came back up again in 2018, and then this was another big talk on various support groups in 2018 when distracted driving became one of the number one causes of accidents, that fatal car crashes, and people are wondering, well, how come they're being treated differently than we are? Which is a very good question. And then in 2019, they pushed this lifetime ban or lifetime look back, where they're looking back at everything you do. And then in 2019, Cuomo has appointed a new commissioner, which left a lot of people in these support groups hopeful that something would come of this, which has not yet. The only thing that has come of this is more, salt in the wounds, because now they went after giving illegal illegal immigrants' driver's licenses. Now, the thing with the illegal immigrants from Mexico is that they don't do any lookbacks on them. So if you were coming from a different state, if you had any alcohol and drug related violations, they would count on your New York State driver's license, and they would go into full effect. Even if you come from Canada, they go into effect. But if you come from Mexico, they don't. Not having lookbacks on the illegal aliens has caused a lot of the people in the support group to go to the ACLU trying to get help and maybe some kind of a lawsuit against New York State. Now, here are some representatives from the city that are talking about it's a civil rights issue before the official, and you are going to deny people the ability to drive their kids to school and their loved ones to access health care and any other resources. Where's your humanity? Well, where's the humanity for residents of upstate New York that cannot live? We don't have public transportation up here. If you don't have a license, you're disabled. You're dehumanized. You have no way to live. You can't take your children to school. You can't take them to sports. You can't take them to the doctor. You can't do anything. And you have counties up here that are refusing to issue these driver's licenses that, of course, Cuomo will get turned around because we live in a dictatorship. My dogs, I've had to give away to one of my friends. I can't take care of them any longer. I can't get dog food. I can't take them to the vets. I've given up. My life is pretty much over. My cows are all gone. I've spent tens of thousands of hours clearing this property, and it's beautiful. And hundreds of thousands of dollars between putting in high tensile fences, water lines, clearing ditches, clearing property. It's just been unbelievable. Excavators, and it's sacrifice and a lifelong plan project that has been destroyed by Cuomo's regulation. My life has been destroyed by this particular, and I have no victims and no accident. Lifelong project that is now gone. This is me from the nearest store. So that's the nearest route to the store, which is 7 miles one way. And it's a $50 round trip by taxi. And that gives you basically 5, maybe 10 minutes if you have a good taxi driver to let you go in the store for $50, which is impossible. This is not the same as Manhattan. This is not the same as Glens Falls, where you have mass transit. You're out here, you're left alone. This is my property in the red with the surrounding area. You can see there is nothing but farmland where I am. This is Washington County. I'm the red dot in the middle. And it's God's country up here. It is beautiful. And it is a lot different than Manhattan, I'll tell you that. And I just did this acres per person, and I based that off of Wikipedia. And if you look at acreage per person in Manhattan, in New York City, in the 5 boroughs, it's 0.022. And Suffolk County is 0.391, and Nassau County is 0.134. Washington County, you have 8.423 acres per person. Okay, so that's basically like, let's say if you have a tiger in the zoo and if you have a tiger out on the safari, okay, you treat that tiger differently. You do not have the same rules and laws for them. Basically, we have 382 times more freedom and liberty up here in Washington County than someone living in Manhattan. You just have more room to do what you want. And that's how it should be. We really need to be a different state. And I don't know how this is going to happen, but it needs to be divided. Now, this is my office. I work from home. The company that I did a lot of work for, a huge manufacturing firm, left New York a couple of years ago, and they moved to South Carolina because of New York rules and taxes and many other things. The plastic bag things, that was a big one with them. Now, I don't have the ability to drive where I would normally go to Connecticut or Massachusetts or New York City to do work. I can't even do that now. So I am lost. I am done. And I'm basically at the end. I'm going to lose my house. I'm totally at the end, behind on my mortgage. I'm done. My life is over because of this. And, here he is talking about we will not tolerate drivers who repeatedly put others at danger. And these numbers show beyond a doubt that their efforts to keep roads safe is working. Well, honestly, most of the people on the support groups, a majority of them have never had an accident. They've never had a victim. They've just had alcohol and drug related violations back because they're in their 50s. And I had my license when I was 16. I got my permit when I turned 16. I got my driver's license 10 days after that. So I've had a driver's license for a long time, and you have to have it here. Now, this is research of various places showing that drunk drivers, distracted drivers, fatigued drivers, aggressive drivers, speeding is one of the number one fatalities in America. And to treat these people differently than they treat people that drink and drive is hypocritical, and it's irrational, and it's discrimination, because most of the people that have these regulations bestowed on them, they haven't had an accident. They haven't killed anyone. And, so why aren't these district drivers and these speeders getting the same punishment as these people that have these alcohol and drug-related violations on their 25-year or history of driver's licenses? And here again, all of these are saying the same thing. They're all in the same category. Speeding is supposedly the number one thing going on right now for fatalities. And distracted drivers is right up there too. So these rules and regulations put only on alcohol and drug-related violations. This is executive orders of a dictatorship. This is not New York State laws. These were not passed by representatives that were voted in by New York State residents. This is what totalitarian state looks like. And we have no representatives up here. We only have rulers. And, this point proves it right here, the difference, the discrimination, because here's the point system for New York State. These are the points that you get for speeding and talking on your phone and reckless driving and various other things. What happens is every 18 months, they are cleared off of your record. You can get 3 speeding tickets if you're not crazy speeding in 18 months, and then boom, they're gone and renewed. With the drunk driver laws, here they are, and there's 2 pages of different violations and mandatory sentences and craziness that is going on with these people. And like I said, a majority of them have never had an accident, or and no victims. There's no victims at all with the majority of these people. The penalties are outrageous, and it's discriminatory, and it's out of control, and it's all about mad money. That's what it really comes down to. Our whole mindset is made by media, so whatever the media pushes is what's happening. And here's the penalty for multiple offenders. Forget about it. You have to have an A2. You can't drive anywhere. So what they should have done in 2012, when they put this in play, is have ignition laws in place, which they could have put on me. I would have no problem having a breathalyzer in my car in 2012 or 2013 when I got my license back. At least I could have lived. Right now, I haven't had a license since 2012. We're 2019. I'm done. I can't catch up. I'm 7.5 years into this. I'm already broke. My life is done. My house is over with. And this is a lot of people are in the same boat as me. And here's just one of the support groups that I found that these people are struggling all over upstate New York. They are losing their houses, losing their lives, losing their wives, losing their husbands. Their children are deprived by this. They can't go to sports. It is the stress on everyone involved with this situation. And I don't know how anyone thinks this is fair. And these representatives down in the city talking about, where's your humanity for illegal aliens that are here illegally, but not New York State residents? Like I said, a majority of these people that have this bestowed on them, that are under this oppression, are people that have never had an accident. There are no victims. And, there is no support for any of these people. These people are desperate. You can go to any of these support groups and you will find despotism. You will find people that are suicidal, that are at the end of their rope, that have lost everything that they've ever worked for, lost their jobs, that are struggling just to get up in the morning, that they don't know what they're going to do. And this is no way for any civilized country to be treating people, because this is discrimination. And this is wrong. And it would be fine if there was mass transportation. I could see it if there was mass transportation for everyone. But this isn't the same state as Manhattan or Long Island. or Rochester or Albany. When you're up here, you are all alone. And if you don't have a car, then you are screwed. I mean, honestly, I would rather have them cut off my right hand than to take away my license. I would have been able to deal with it. The New York State government is at state, county, town, and village levels. It's all corrupt criminal empires. New York State is arbitrary government. There is no rule of law. Arbitrary government means everyone gets different laws. Totalitarianism is a political concept where the state recognizes no limits on its authority and strives to control every aspect of public and private life wherever feasible. This is what we have in New York. And this is why we should be divided. New York State is two completely different environments, and they shouldn't be treated the same way. People up here have a whole different way to live, a whole different lifestyle that is different than Manhattan, different than Long Island. They should have the freedom and liberty to live how they want, because this can't go on. There's no way this is right in a modern day country that we are living this way. If you live in upstate New York and you are tired of being ruled by people that live in little boxes in New York City, I advise you to contact your representatives and try to get something done about this. Now, here's the other thing I wanted to mention. The NDR, which is the National Driver Registry. This is another thing that affects these people that have been banned for life from getting a driver's license. Not only can these people never get a driver's license again in New York State, they can never get a driver's license in any other state in the nation because of this NDR, the National Driver Registration. If you're on this, even if the states that don't have these strict DWI laws that New York State does, if you're on this, you cannot get a license in any other state. Therefore, the people that have this banned, this lifetime ban, I had the 5 years, but that was enough to kill me. I mean, I've been 7.5 years without a license. That's killed me. But for a lifetime ban, these people can never get a driver's license anywhere in the United States. The United States Declaration of Independence, the pronouncement adopted by the Second Continental Congress in Philadelphia on July 4th, 1776, was quite clear on what their plans were to stay away from tyranny, which we have now. Preamble of it says, "We hold truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and they are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." You cannot have life and a pursuit of happiness and liberty when you live in upstate New York, when you live with no transportation, and King Cuomo decides he's going to take away your license for things that you've done 25 plus years ago. I don't know how we've gotten to this point in this state that we have no Republicans and no Democrats. We have Cuomoists. There is no two parties. Absolutely out of control. To go on like this in upstate New York, there has to be a change. Alcohol and driving has been grouped into a stereotype, mostly by MAD. Again, back to money. These people are no different than speeders or distracted drivers. Somehow, the media has put everyone into this groupthink psychosis, where it is a standardized mental picture that is held in common by members of a group that represents an oversimplified opinion, prejudice attitude, or uncritical judgment of a group. And that's what we have. This is all done, again, by mad money, and this is nothing but discrimination. Discrimination against a group of people because vengeance. It comes down to vengeance laws. These people that have been hurt by a drunk driver, and they go after everyone. Again, this is discrimination, an act of practice or an instance of discriminating category rather than individually. The quality and power to finally distinguishing, the act of making or perceiving a difference, the act of discriminating. This is the Eighth Amendment. When you're in upstate New York, this is an Eighth Amendment constitutional right. This is cruel and unusual punishment for people that live up here. Do not have a driver's license for a 5-year period after they are supposed to get it back. That was retroactively put on us, or indefinitely never to have a driver's license. This is cruel and unusual. And then we can look at the 14th Amendment. Due process. There's no due process in any of this. None of us knew this was coming. There's two clauses in the 14th Amendment, which are the due process clause and the Equal Protection Clause. Now, there is no equal protection here against people that are drinking and driving, that may not even have that much to drink, and they are put in this category of being discriminated against, where speeders and distracted drivers are just as bad or worse, and they are not treated the same way. It's discrimination, and it goes against the 8th Amendment for cruel and unusual punishment and the 14th Amendment equal protection law. Illegal aliens are treated, they have more rights in New York than upstate New York people do. I don't know what is going on with the state, but something really has to change. Again, inalienable rights of a person to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which is impossible when you live without a license up here. The breathalyzer thing, that should have been put into play before they passed this regulation, if that was what their plan was. Even going back to due process, if we look at the 14th Amendment with due process, there's no due process with this. This is enforced on people that had a 6-month term in jail for their past DWI that they completed, and they did all their classes, and they did everything that was required by court. Now, basically, Cuomo is saying, okay, they're about ready to get out of jail, and Cuomo comes in and says, well, I've decided that you have to do 5 more years. Or I've decided that you're never getting out of prison. This is what we have. This is not right.